Hello everyone, thanks for listening. If you haven't already, please take a look at some of my other videos where I describe a device that I believe would be a new electric engine that would potentially bring on a new electric current. So if you haven't already, please take a look. In this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the physics and changing the perspective of how we look at things. So in our technological world right now, for the most part, we're limited by the understanding of our physics, and our engineers can only go so far as our physicists guide them. And so it seems a lot in the physicist side, there's a lot of scattered ideas. People have ideas and concepts that have some that have stood the test of time, and some that have changed. And so and I think perspective on all of these is really key in understanding them all. So if we look at our technological age, I think that transistors are a great example of how we've engineered ourselves into a corner. We use transistors to perform switching or decisions within this quantum world, but fail to see exactly what's going on. Very similar to the way that we move light in a vacuum for a neon sign, but it's not until you step back that you see where you actually are. Electricity is simply the movement of electrons. In AC, we move them around in a wave in a circuit, and in DC, we move them from element to element. Similarly, light, we're told, is a wave, and we're also told that it's a particle, and that it contains spin and other information that dictates its characteristics. And so within all the theories that exist, there seems to be something that comes up quite a bit, and that's that there's this as above, as below, where when we look at the world above, there seems to be a resemblance with the quantum world, or the world below. And when you look at the quantum world a little bit more closely, you could see that this subatomic world, a lot of the pieces are paired off, where we have matter and antimatter. When this matter is created, instantly an antimatter is created that when it comes into contact with it would annihilate it. And it's the context of a lot of the building blocks of a lot of our particles moving either to the left or to the right, and they contain some sort of information. So to give an example about how our perspective needs to change, if we look at the greatest scientists, physicists right now performing work over at CERN, they've been colliding particles together, smashing them, and seeing what happens, essentially, right? Smashing photons of light and seeing what particles appear, to see and to find the building blocks of life. And with everything that they found, the Higgs boson, and it took a lot of headlines. But in my perspective, when I see what they're doing, I see a real fatal flaw. So first off, when they're moving the electrons and the photons around in these massive circuits, they're moving them around without taking into consideration their integer spin, the way that they're spinning as they're going around this track. They're simply just following the light, and they spin according to what they want to spin. But I have issues with that, because when they collide, they don't know the physical location of where that rotation is as it collides with the other one, and they are guessing as to what particles would appear. And in my opinion, if they knew the physical location of the rotation, this location as they collide would dictate the physical characteristics of the particle itself. And so much like a bee dances and there's information encoded within that dance, I believe it's very similar with electrons and particles. When they dance, when they collide, there is a creation that happens. There's a DNA that takes place, like a human's helix to a living organism, except the information for this helix is actually created from the angles and kinetic energy of their collisions. When you look at that based on the information that we know with subatomic particles, with quarks and leptons, it's very apparent that there is this equal and opposite force that plays within the dance of these particles, and that these particles really do have some dance moves, and that their specific moves dictate their specific properties. So when you look at it, it's actually a little bit ironic in that when you talk to a lot of these physicists, they liken their mathematical formulas to a music sheet, to the way an artist looks or a musician looks at his sheet. They look at their equations, and only they can truly appreciate the facts of that simply by looking at the piece of paper. Well, there's an irony in that the physicists are looking at this paper, seeing these electrons dance, but don't have the artistic imagination to recognize that music is actually being played. So by changing our perspective, we could see that where the physicists over at CERN are moving these electrons or photons of light forward so quickly, which causes a great amount of heat, and this heat could heat entire neighborhoods. And regardless of the cryogenics, they're simply forcing the electron through at whatever spin, very similar to a musket and a bullet. And so where they're shooting their bullet forward with this great amount of resistance, in my system, I'm putting them forward in a spiral with a rifling, with an ability to cut through the resistance and maintain a kinetic motion. So instead of causing this heat, it moves forward like a water slide. So when we talk about perspective, and outside of the concept of my own design for my device, the possibility of being able to sequence matter and understand the point of, or control their locations and energy at the time of their collisions to sequence that matter, the implications are incredible. So to steer back to my design, my circuits are using diamagnetic and ferromagnetic properties, where we are controlling the rotation of the electrons within a copper tube, and this maintains a spiral for them while they move forward. And as they move forward through capacitor plates and a magnetron set that allows for a splitting to take place, a division to take place, where the energies can move forward without one impeding the other. So essentially, if you understand the work that's being done at CERN and subatomic particles itself and electrical theory, I essentially believe that the Higgs boson is that equal and opposite force in a circuit, and its creation in there creates that equal and opposite force. It is that antimatter in that circuit, in that rotation, that is automatically created. And by creating the device in my manner, its rate of decay, its moment of life, is released into the separate circuit through Maxwell's demon. So those that don't know, Maxwell's demon is not really a bad guy. He's a hypothetical particle that exists between two chambers that would open the door to allow this entropy to reverse, basically to allow a system to come back into order, and then get that disorder and back to order. And so it is a statistically improbable design. However, statistically, it is absolutely possible. So the irony being that Maxwell's demon is actually fishing for Higgs boson's God particles, in that these particles, these God particles, have a super fast rate of decay. And so they exist within a closed circuit. However, they're not found. They're found as the equal and opposite force. And I believe that through the capacitors, the time varying of capacitors being matched up with the time varying of the field that exists, that displacement current mathematically is used to explain, when it lines up with that, it unlocks that particle onto a separate circuit. So at the beginning, I mentioned about perspective and the use of our existing world using transistors that are boxing us into an energy source that can't really supply it with the amount of computing power that it requires. And so we're boxed in a corner with transistors. But with vacuum tubes and the use of vacuum tubes within the device, the sign as to what's going on actually becomes quite apparent, because within each of these capacitor sets we're moving direct and alternating current, and these currents are waves and they're particles moving through the device. And so by using these two circuits, we harness the potential of hot to cold, but it also would lead one to believe that we're harnessing the potential of light and their properties of being either a wave or a particle being harnessed. So based on all of that, if you have a basic understanding of physics or electrical engineering, you gotta be questioning things pretty closely right now, because everything I've explained fits perfectly within the theoretical knowledge of what we have. There is nobody that knows. There cannot be that. And so without building this device, there can be no way in truly knowing what would happen. In reality, I have speakers tied in with microwaves that are pointed towards amplifiers that are tied together in an AC motor. And these are the basic components configured together in a different manner. And nobody knows what would happen in this situation. So with all that being said, I hope you recognize that everything is a theory right now. We could really only work with what we got, and more than likely when we find the answer, the simplest answer is going to be the right answer. And everything that I've explained up to now really doesn't take more than a grade 12 physics to understand the implications of this. So please like, share, and subscribe to all my posts and videos. And more importantly, please ask Elon if he'll help me build it.